Yes, hello everyone. I'm Jemiah. I'm the communications lead here at EqualReach, and welcome to today's event on AI and the future of work. So, as many of you will know, AI is reshaping industries and it's opening new opportunities globally, but only if we have the right skills. So, at EqualReach, we believe AI should drive inclusion, helping displaced talent and professionals worldwide secure work and thrive in the digital economy. And so that's why we've partnered with the amazing Brandtech Group, leaders in AI-powered marketing. And you might have seen them featured in Forbes, the Times, and Bloomberg. And so today, the experts will share free and low-cost AI tools, which will boost productivity and creativity. There's no sales pitches in here, just actionable insight. So let me just welcome our speakers. First, we have Amy Arnell. She is Gen AI Business Manager at the Brandtech Group. With a background in B2B SaaS and emerging tech, Amy specializes in AI-driven client solutions, tackling challenges like biases and sustainability. She has extensive experience in beauty, fashion, and luxury industries. And joining Amy, we have James Dow, Gen AI Creative Director at the Brandtech Group, formerly Creative Director at Brandtech Consulting, and a Senior Campaign Director at Burberry. James leads AI-powered marketing and collaborates with top AI creators to push digital marketing boundaries. And so this is a community that learns together. So please, if you can, come on video if you're able to, so we can see all of your smiling faces and all the beautiful countries you're all joining in from. And at the end, we'll have time for some questions. So as questions arise, please to put them in the chat. And because we'll have a full house, we ask that you please remain on mute until you're called on later. And as you may have just heard, the event is being recorded. So if you miss anything, you'll be able to watch it back later. And just before we get started, we have some exciting news. Following today's event, we'll be launching a competition where you can showcase your AI learning in a unique and creative way. So all the skills and stuff that you can be learning today, you could be able to showcase that today. And so you can bring to life any of the case studies from today's session. So prepare to take notes and stay engaged throughout the session. So the full details of this competition will be shared at the end. So please keep an eye on your email that you've registered for this event. And of course, keep an eye on the Equal Reach LinkedIn page. So yeah, we look forward to seeing your submissions. But before we begin with Amy and James, just want to pass it over to Giselle, EqualReach founder and CEO, who would like to say a few words.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. It is so exciting to see so many friendly faces and names on this call. If you haven't heard of EqualReach, we are a first of its kind freelancing marketplace to connect talent from around the world. So we work with vetted teams. Many of you are in the delivery partners that we work with to connect you to businesses that need the skills that you have. And our whole point of operating is we believe that talent is everywhere, even though opportunity is not. So we want to be able to help be that bridge to make opportunities more accessible, whether you are from a local community or have a background of experiencing displacement. We want to make sure the world sees your skills and that you can find a place in the digital economy. I'm so excited to have Amy and James on here. I actually was an attendee at a session that they put on before, and I was so blown away. My notes app was just filled to the brim with all of the content that you guys are about to experience. So I knew it was one that we wanted to be able to bring to share broadly with this community as well. So thank you, everyone. Remember, put your questions in the chat. And without further ado, I'll hand it off to Amy and James.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I want to say hello. I'm sure Amy wants to say hello before we jump in. I just want to say it's an honor to speak to everyone here. It's incredible to see so many people from so many different places around the world. And I think that's testament to the world of work that we live in now, that we can all jump in together, share ideas, have conversations. And I think the promise of Gen AI is as a democratizing tool for creativity that individuals can kind of punch much higher than their own usual weight with these incredible tools that allow us to build videos and create copy and do all the things that agencies kind of had control over in the past. So this is a great time to be a creator. So yeah, hopefully some of the tools we're going to show you are going to give you some inspiration or some tips. It's kind of meant for, I'll bring it up now, but it's kind of meant for a mixed audience. So we'll kind of treat it as if partly that you've never heard of Gen AI and partly that you're an expert in it. So there'll be detail and there'll be summaries as well. So yeah, I'll hand over to Amy, who will kick us off.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having us. And it's so lovely to be here. So yes, today we're going to be doing a little bit of a 101 in terms of using Gen AI. We're going to be focusing on AI for marketing contexts. Of course, it's worth us saying up front, that is like 0.001% of everything that AI is being used for in the world currently. But James and I are humble in our knowledge of AI, and we're going to limit it to the marketing realm today, as that is what we do in our day-to-day. So yes, this is hopefully going to be an insight into some tools that we've been using and some ways that you could use AI on some of the briefs that you're getting through from clients currently. So to level set, our AI journey at the Brandtech Group started way back when in 2018. At the time, AI couldn't tell the difference between a muffin and a chihuahua. And to be honest, the more you look at some of these chihuahuas, the more they look like muffins and vice versa. So you can kind of understand why AI was having such a hard time there. But if you fast forward to today, we can make images, and this is created by James himself in a matter of seconds, that are almost that photoreal kind of level of quality. Similarly, way back when in 2022, there was the argument that AI can't understand faces or it can't understand humans, etc. You may have seen some of those kind of spoofs where AI is getting the number of fingers and limbs wrong and it's getting all confused. Whereas now, moving into 2024, we can generate really realistic imagery of human faces. And moving forward into September 2024, we're again able to get sort of like photoreal standards where I think if you were scrolling through this really quickly, you probably wouldn't tell that that was AI straight off the bat. This is using the same prompt, so the same kind of text into the image tool, but just kind of the scale of change is phenomenal. And then finally, when it comes to text, we think this is really interesting. You've probably heard a lot of headlines about ChatGPT and about text tools, etc. This graph I love as it shows the time it took for some of the most popular apps in the world to reach 100 million users. So Pinterest, for example, is up there at 6 years, and that at the time was considered incredible. You know, Instagram, 2 years, everyone thought that that was game changing. TikTok, 9 months, you know, never before beaten. And then ChatGPT took just 2 months to reach 100 million users. This is phenomenal. What we do sometimes find, though, is that people try out ChatGPT a few times. It's not giving them the results that they want. It doesn't feel brand right. It doesn't feel like the tone of voice that they're looking for. So they kind of move on and don't revisit it. Today, James is going to be giving us some tips onto how to make ChatGPT work for you in your workflows from a work perspective. But we feel like it would be remiss for us to do this presentation without acknowledging that AI has its issues. As James said, it could be a great creative equalizer, but it could also run the risk of further kind of exacerbating the digital divide that we're currently seeing. So yeah, next slide. I really wanted to call out this slide because bias is everywhere in AI, and we shouldn't shy away from that when we're using these tools. It's in the training set, so a lot of people do not know what has gone into these AI models. In fact, if anybody, and AI is has a predisposition to suggest the most probable outcome. That is the way that these AI models. So if you prompt, I'd like to see of this, AI will give you a white male. That is a fact. It's giving the most probable outcome, even though in real life this number is 88%, 97% of the times AI will give you a white man. And that's just kind of one or two forms of bias, but it's really important to think of as early users of this technology, how we can make sure that we're making the world of AI marketing a more inclusive place as opposed to perpetuating stereotypes. In addition, 92% of AI software developers identify as male. So we're seeing a big gender gap there. And that's, of course, only one way of looking at this in terms of inclusivity. And then finally, only 1.2% of AI VC funding last year went to women. So this is not a magic tool without any downside, but it's still a tool that we can use understanding these biases. Some brands have been hit hard by this. This is where James and I kind of focus our time. For example, you may have seen that Levi's decided to test AI-generated clothing models in order to increase diversity instead of increasing diversity of the real-life models that they shoot in camera. There's been a number of different corporate backlashes. We at the Brandtech Group are really focused on training people and also, to Giselle's point, making sure that, we have diverse teams creating diverse AI work. We all need to play a role in making sure that these AI tools are bridging digital divides. Again, some slightly funnier examples. We've all seen the rise of chatbots and their hallucinations. In this case, someone said, "Hello, could you write me a haiku or a poem about just how useless DPD are?" DPD is a delivery firm in the UK who are notoriously awful. And the chatbot replied, "DPD is a useless chatbot, can't even help you. Don't even bother calling them." And then it said, DPD is the worst delivery firm in the world. They are slow, unreliable, and their customer service is terrible. I would never recommend them to anyone. So all this to say that, as brands, you do sometimes have to be careful, as AI might speak, well, the truth to AI and perhaps the truth to your consumer, but not the truth that you want to be telling. Again, we may have seen this example. Even the world's biggest tech companies are not immune from these embarrassing kind of difficulties. Someone typed into Google, "My cheese isn't sticking to my pizza," and Google AI recommended, "Why don't you add about 1/8 of a cup of non-toxic glue to your pizza? That might give the sauce some more tackiness." Don't know about you, but I don't like the idea of a glue-infused pizza. So we also need to be careful on the messaging that we're giving. Nonetheless, despite AI's many flaws, some of them funny, others much more serious, the fact remains, to James's point, that people are making incredible things with these tools. We won't show you a ton of these things, although we're more than happy to share some of our favorite examples after the call, but wanted to show you one, which is an example of the first ever music video made entirely in AI. So that looks brilliant, of course, but what we often don't see are the prompts that go into these pieces of content. AI is not a magic button. It's a craft, it's a skill, it's an expertise. We'll be shedding some light on ways to use these tools during today's session, but just wanted to show here the prompt, as I think this really shows the need for the creative. For James and I working in the advertising industry, at the very beginning, we had some fears in the company around will AI take my job? Is AI a creative replacement? And our response to that is absolutely not. AI is a tool, like a pencil, like a paintbrush, like Photoshop. It's a tool for you to use as creatives and for you to harness. It's absolutely not a replacement. And then finally, another piece that we've created, which is very close to our hearts. At the Brandtech Group, we had this session last year of creating all of the content for the rest of the Olympic team, and we used AI for this. So we had people take footage on their phone cameras. We used this to train an AI model, turn it into a graphic style, and we were able to create all of the content that went around the refugee team at the Olympics in Paris last year. So that's a bit of a background into us and a little bit of a background into AI. As we were at the conference that Giselle mentioned, we were speaking with a lot of young people that wanted to start using these tools, and a number of key kind of brand challenges came up. And then actually when talking with Giselle and the EqualReach team, we realized that a lot of these key challenges are actually briefs that you are all tackling for real businesses around the world. So we wanted to try and create use cases that would be useful for you. And we've landed on 5. If you have any further, please feel free to send us a follow-up email and we can chat. But for the purposes of today, we're going to be looking at how to create a logo from scratch using AI, how to build a consistent brand voice, or how to use the brand voice of the brand that you are working on. So say you're working on a real client brief, how do you make sure that all of your writing matches their tone of voice? How do you get good prompts to make sure that your images really feel unique to what you're trying to achieve and don't just look sort of AI-y? How do you make compelling video assets, typically something that would have taken a lot of cost and a lot of time in the past. How can you do that using AI? And then finally, of course, given the number of people from so many different countries in the room today, how do you make multi-language content with the help of AI? Brilliant.
It's me, isn't it?
Over to you,
Okay.
James.
So I've tried to go into it the right kind of detail. There's obviously extra steps and things that you will learn along the way, but this should give you a sense of how to go about making some of these things. Oh, there's this slide too. Yeah, we set some limits at the start of this thing, which we thought were really important, is that you can break the bank with AI. I'm sure you've been to some of the websites and seen their pro user costs at like, I think
Hundreds of dollars.
yeah, I think there's some of them about, yeah, hundreds, 200s. I think OpenAI are talking about $1,000 subscription for something at the moment. So these are supposed to be under $20. Some of them have free versions as well, as I'm sure you know, having signed up, lots have a sort of freemium or a timed trial or a daily limit. We wanted this to be no code, so these are things that just work straight away, that you don't have to have any kind of development experience with. And then we had originally kind of come up this thing. This doesn't fit so much in this realm, but in terms of creative experience, you should be able to bring what you know to this, and it should work really well without having the AI experience already. But wait, before we talk about exact prompts and tools and things like that, there is just some basics that I always like to go back to that I find really important. And these are things that all creative people share that I think are worth remembering and taking into your work with AI. The first is to stay curious. So the fact that you're here means that you're probably already one of these people that is interested in what's coming, and interested in finding new ways of working, interesting to listening and talking and sharing what you're doing. So staying curious is a really important part of how to get the most out of generative AI, because it's changing all the time. Following others. So yeah, we can kind of imagine we're experts in what we're doing, but ultimately there's always someone else that knows something that I don't. And so I spend a fair bit of time on social media following accounts that are doing amazing things in Gen AI. And I'm following some of the different companies that are building the models. And this just helps me stay on top of a really rapidly evolving world. There are new models every week. There are creatives that are happy to share their workflows like we're doing today. It's a very open community, unlike, film and television perhaps, or CGI or Hollywood, where it's all about the secret to how they do stuff. I feel like Gen AI, at least now in its early days, is a very open place where people are happy to share tips and tricks and links to what they're working on. So yeah, get on social media if you're not already, and follow as much relevant Gen AI stuff to you as you can. Try every tool. So you don't tend to know if something's going to work for you until you've tried it. And because Gen AI appears to work in a way where you might use 3 or 4 tools to achieve an end result, I think it's really important that you stay very hands-on and try all of the different tools. This is one of the things I like the most, is that I guess back when I was probably kind of like 18 to 21, I was making a lot of stuff. And these days I'm kind of pointing at screens a lot. And then with the advent of Gen AI, I was able to just start making stuff again. I didn't have any barriers to trying out a photographic style. I didn't have any barriers to seeing what something might look like cinematically before we have to go and pitch it to clients. So trying all of the tools we talked about, lots have free versions or have very cheap versions. What I tend to do sometimes, if something's new and I have to pay for it, if I can afford it, I'll spend, say, $9 for that month and just subscribe and kind of cancel straight away. That way you're not going to get stung next month, but then you've got a month to play with the tool and see if it kind of fits your workflow. And you're really trying to collect things that work really well for you. So that's about trying all the tools. And yes, you are creative. You bring it into AI. AI is kind of a blank canvas, right? And you bring to it your speciality. So if you have a great sense of photography, if you have a great sense of design, or you're a writer, you know, whatever your discipline is, that's your advantage over other people. So in what you're doing already, people are working with you because they love your sensibility and your taste and your output. With AI, you know, you've got a great advantage over many other people because you have all this ability already. So that's what you bring to AI. And then just channel your inner child. This, you know, Gen AI is, I find it immensely fun. And although you can get quite stressed about how fast it's moving, there is a sense of anxiety that you'll miss the latest model or that everyone else is using something you're not using. Ultimately, I think if you're having fun with it and you enjoy what you're designing, creating, music, you know, whatever tools you're playing with, I think that's kind of the approach I like to bring to it. You know, I guess being creative is quite classically being childish because children never learn to stop playing. Um, and that's what we encourage with them. So yeah, I encourage you all to play as much as you can already. I'm sure as creative people, that makes a lot of sense to you.
Brilliant. On to our first challenge. How do I create a logo from scratch using AI?
Well, Amy, this was very difficult until quite recently, because lots of the models couldn't create text very well, but now they can. So I'm going to show you one way to do this. Um, this was an example of a brief that Amy
Just
dropped
to kind
in.
of make it relevant to the context of equal reach, here is a screenshot from the platform that the team kindly sent over to us of a real brief that went live. So trying to keep this in your world. Here, develop a brand for a new business in time to launch this summer. How do you create brand identity, including a logo and a color palette, etc. We took this brief and had a little bit of fun with it using AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually kind of borrowed from something thinking about this brief that myself and David Jones, the CEO, were talking to Fast Company about. We did a interview there, and the interviewer was really interested in starting a toothpaste brand that was a bit like Liquid Death. So all the toothpaste aisle is basically just white with different colors on it, right? Fresh, healthy teeth. And he wanted to create something that stood out as like rock and roll, heavy metal, and kind of a bit anarchistic. So one of the things I talk about quite a lot is about the ability to kind of build your own tools. I'll go into how you develop these in a minute, but I've created a prompt wizard that allows me to put in quite simple prompts, and then gives me back 3 versions of a much more complicated prompt that has much more detail in it, which will cover cinematography, lenses, cameras, lighting, you know, art direction and those kind of things. So I'll show you a bit how this works, and then I can actually share this after. I'll share the prompt wizard with you. You can have a play with it, maybe develop your own version. So I asked for a black and white logo for a brand of toothpaste called Plaque Slayer. The brand is edgy and inspired by Liquid Death. So I'm giving it a bit of context here and the heavy metal scene. And then I've said, think Metallica, angular spiky font, skulls, etc. But I want it to be a simple word mark. So there's nothing smart here. I haven't tried to be like uber clever with getting a prompt. And I haven't jumped straight into Midjourney or any of the other tools that we might be using. And it's going to give me back these 3 options. So they're quite detailed. You can see if I read one, talks about jagged, spiked, and angular font, heavily inspired, metal lettering. And this one, the top one, suggested that the P&S have elongated fang-like serifs, giving a sense of aggression. The letters appear slightly distressed, mimicking the texture of scratched metal or cracked enamel. The overall shape of the logo subtly forms a tooth-like silhouette, reinforcing the dental theme while maintaining a brutal, rebellious edge. And the other 2 are very different. So what I like to do is just go really quick. The great thing about Gen AI is you can go super fast. So you can just try stuff, and iterate really quickly and not get too hung up on one thing.
So would you say, James, when you're like initially making a prompt,
Mm.
rather than spending hours finessing your first prompt
Mhm.
into ChatGPT or any other tool, just go for it, see what it gives back, and don't be afraid to ask ChatGPT to improve your prompt for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helps to rather just improve your prompt within Mid-Journey by changing certain words. I would have an open dialogue with something like ChatGPT or Gemini, whichever one you like, or whichever others you like to use, and say, oh, here's the prompt I'm developing. It doesn't feel edgy enough, or it feels too classic, or I'd like it to feel more Art Deco, or whatever it is you're trying to build. I want it to be red or yellow or inspired by Ghana, or, you know, whatever the culture or brand is that you're trying to kind of imbue in your work. So these three I've just immediately put in. I'm using a tool called Krea. Again, I'll send a link round afterwards, and they have a daily limit for a free version, so you can use that. And the model here is Flux. Now, Flux is one that I'm using a lot at the moment, and the reason is it does text really well, and its prompt adherence, which is how well it understands what you've written and can generate it, is extremely high. So that's great. And you can see the three have it's given me three very different ways to solve this. So I kind of liked a lot of the top one, and I thought I'd take that and make it a little bit simpler. And so I play around with the prompt a little bit and describe, I'd like it a little bit less like this and a little bit more like that. And I end up with something like this. So that's come straight out of the model after I played around with it for a bit. And then for those that are graphic designers, what you can do if you want to make this a proper tool is just pop that in Illustrator, trace it, and then you've got yourself a vectorized format, and you can use that on anything. So if I'm thinking about turning my logo into something on products, I can generate an image of some blank toothpaste tubes in my scene, and then I can just use Photoshop really just to chuck this on top. And then you get something a bit like this. So we started to develop the brand world for Plaque Slayer. And all I've done really is I've generated this image and around it, and I've popped the logos on top. I've just asked for a blank toothpaste at this point. So yeah, that's kind of how you might create a logo. As I said, there are different ways to do this, but that's sort of my current go-to for developing logos.
Awesome. Next up, how do I build a consistent brand voice? I guess this is coming from two ways. Either, you know, companies want to use freelance talent, but want to make sure that their brand voice is consistent. And for you, I would imagine when you're receiving a brief from a company, first stages is probably having to kind of look through everything that company has currently released to see what their brand voice is like, to see how they're interacting with their consumers, for you to then almost take on that brand profile yourself.
Yeah, so whether you're building a brand that's new or whether you are working with the existing brand, this route works for both. How I like to do this is, again, to build a tool. So I was showing you earlier the prompt tool, which I built inside GPT, and I'll show you how to build a brand voice tool as well. So
James, is there a reason why you're using ChatGPT here and not another tool?
yeah, it's just the fact that you can build GPTs and you can search for other people. So it's a bit like the App Store.
And what is a GPT?
A GPT is a custom version. So ChatGPT is like the one that you use where you just turn up and type and talk to it.
Yeah.
And you can build a custom GPT, which you give instructions to, and then it will only respond within the remit you've given it. So you can build a GPT that is a logo designer. You can build one that's a Shakespearean sonnet creator or a hip hop rap kind of lyricist. So like you can,
And then every time you prompt for anything, it will reply in the style of a hip hop rap.
exactly.
That's something to try.
Yeah. Depends what brand you're working on,
Say,
right?
yes.
So here's an example of how you would do this, and I hope this makes sense. There may be questions about this. So you want to hit the button that says Explore GPTs on that left-hand side, and that will bring you to the GPTs page. And you can see there's people have already made lots. So if you think you need help with something, like the rest of life, someone on the internet's done it, right? So whether you're trying to code or do designs, or look, you can see a logo creator someone's made there as well. I don't know how good that one is. But so what we're doing is we're going to hit make my own one, and then you get faced with a screen. Now, you don't have to learn any code to do this. You just have to be able to write in your own language, which is super cool. You can just converse with it. What we're going to do is we're going to put this text in. So we're going to tell it that we want it to act as a brand guardian for rights on flights. This was a friend of ours called Josh, who we were working with through One Young World. And the idea is to help users develop ideas, copy, and other tasks that fit their brand world. And I say your aim is to guide conversations to a place where the idea feels on brand, and to ensure that the copy produced is also in the brand tone of voice. You are also to talk in the first person in the tone of voice of Rights on Flights. So what I'm doing here is I'm just describing, it's almost a job description. And I try to think of it as I'm kind of creating assistants that I can work with. And I'm just saying, hey, I want you to work like this. And so that's in my instructions here. And then what I'm going to do is there's something on the screen here called knowledge, and you can upload files to it. So this means you can give it a database of information that it will draw on all the time. So if you're working on Adidas and you have a load of their social posts and you have their brand documents, you could just upload them into here and it would understand the type of tone of voice that you're talking about. For this example, I actually just went to Instagram and copy and pasted a load of social posts, like 20, 30 social posts, into a Google Doc, saved it, and then uploaded it here. So now it kind of knows what we sound like. And then it just starts talking to you, says, let's proceed to the next step. What would you like to focus on? We can refine specific areas, we can add functionality, and it asks me what our role and focus should be. Are there any constraints? So what should I not talk about? And there are any guidelines for how I should talk to people? And I say, let's add some starter questions. Let's shorten them to 7 words. Let's keep really prompt. And then when I've finished doing that, I can say, write the social media post on accessibility. And this is actually what it gave me back, because I've added the tone of voice and it knows what the brand is and it knows what we're trying to do. It gives me this as a first pass, which is amazing. So this is a post that Josh could go live with. Accessibility in air travel, time for change. Air travel should be accessible to everyone, but right now it's falling behind. Passengers with disabilities still face unnecessary risks and indignities. This is unacceptable. And it's using the hashtags that he uses. It has his tone of voice in terms of he likes to use a lot of emoji. And it's really, the tone of voice is exactly how he would like it. But I can also get it to come up with ideas for campaigns as well. So it can serve as a bit of a creative partner. I can say, give me some ideas for a campaign that targets regulators. And then it will give me 5 ideas that fit the world of this brand. So here are some top level campaign ideas. No more excuses campaign, or accessibility is a right, not a request campaign. And then you can start talking to it about how you would improve that. It might give you ideas. AI is never going to give you the final answer. I think the creative is always going to get there with their own bit of imagination, but this can get you there quite quickly. All right.
Awesome. Moving swiftly onwards, away from the role of text and into the role of imagery. How do you create great prompts for image generation? We had a lot of people saying to us, they've been trialing around with image creation, but it still doesn't feel as realistic as sometimes stock imagery can, or it doesn't look like it's been shot in camera. So how do you make sure that images created in AI are good enough for brands to use in their marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were talking to the Marine Diaries, and we were thinking about how we might develop kind of, nature imagery without having to spend, you haven't got that much money to kind of dive off the coast of the Caribbean and
Do an
take loads of their own
underwater
photos. So this was a kind of a solution for that. In this case, we were showing Mid-Journey because a lot of people use that, and it's a fantastic tool. So if you just put in a really basic prompt, something like an orca in the sea surrounded by plastic waste, then you get some nice stuff back. It looks good. It looks photoreal. You could go live with that straight away.
And this is what's come out directly from your prompt.
Yeah, so that's just
Yep.
an orca in the sea surrounded by plastic waste. It's not a particularly clever prompt, and it doesn't have any detail in. And you're certainly a serviceable image. But as a creative, you might have a bit more in mind that you want to kind of get to. So this is where we go back to our prompt formula. And this is actually the sort of the secret sauce behind the prompt generator, which I will be sharing after this. And the smart thing about it is you say, I want to create a prompt for an image of an orca in the ocean surrounded by plastic sea waste. Now, the secret sauce is I want 3 options, and I want each of them to be in this format. So the description, the background, additional elements, the effect, the overall composition, and I want them all styled in one paragraph. So that then allows it to go away and do a bit of thinking and come back with, again, these 3 options. And you can see, instead of me just saying an orca swimming around plastic, we've got really nice descriptions. We've got ideas about contrast against deep blue water. We've got sunlight filters, shimmering effects.
But instead of having to get poetic yourself, you're asking AI to create this prompt for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And your starting prompt can be as detailed as you want. If you've got a really clear image in your head of an athlete crossing the line and the sky is like stormy and I don't know, whatever, there's no crowd there, you can kind of have as much detail as you want at the start, but then using a tool like this with that formula will help add things into it that you might not have thought about. And suddenly you start to get back a real range of stuff. And again, like I said earlier about trialing lots of different things with Gen AI quickly, you might end up liking something you didn't first have in your head, because it's often happy accidents in creativity that take you to that next step. So here I can kind of look and go, actually, this one on the right-hand side is much more like what I'm looking for. It feels moody and very cinematic. So I'm going to choose that one. And what's cool with lots of these tools is you can edit the size of them and you can infill and imagine the rest of the screen.
So if your brief is for an Instagram post and Instagram stories, for example, you can get the aspect ratios that you need.
Yeah, exactly. So that shot that was originally just a square one, I can make 9:16 for TikTok or something like that, or I can make it widescreen for a presentation like this. And then one of the most important tools is upscaling. So I like to use Magnific. Now this is probably the only thing in here that's actually quite expensive, but I would say for me personally, it's a must-have. You can see the level of detail it adds to the image, and that takes it from I'll play that one again because it's so interesting to see that. That takes it from a small image, about 1,000 pixels that comes out of the AI model, into a 4K image that you could use for print if you wanted to. And you can just see the level of detail that it adds to your image. And this is what starts to make things look extremely professional.
Yeah, this is a step that we would never miss out on whenever we're working on AI briefs for our clients. As soon as you have the final image, putting it through an upscaler is kind of part of that checklist before delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. So you end up with a beautifully upscaled image. We've chucked our logo on there as well for perhaps a presentation that they might be giving. All right.
Awesome. Okay, moving on. How do I make video assets for socials? So we've done a little bit on text, a little bit on static, moving now into video, which I think is traditionally the kind of medium that's had the biggest barriers to entry. Getting kind of professional grade video is really challenging in the world pre-AI. So post the AI, it's exciting to see what we're able to create now.
Yeah, and this, the area of video, I'm sure if you followed much of Gen AI video news in the past year, is that's the area that's suddenly exploding onto the scene. So we'll soon, probably by the end of this year, we'll probably have full 4K outputs that could be up to a minute long, fully cinematic, and as good as the photorealistic pictures that we can produce. So you'll notice we're back here again. This is
Noticing themes.
it's not an accident. I'm spending a lot of time here. As I said, I'm not the only one making tools, so are other people. And it's all about linking these tools together to get the most out of them. So I'm not just going to jump straight into Google VO or into Runway and just try and make a video for myself. I'm going to start with the prompt, and I'm going to start with an image that I like. So here I found Runway Gen 3 prompt generator. The good thing about this is it's been designed to speak like a director would. So it's going to give cinematographic, is that a word? Language to me. So I'm not a filmmaker. I know a little bit about it. But this is really going to help me work out pans and zooms and depths of field and lighting. So it's going to give me language I don't currently have. So what I do is I'm going to drop my image of the orca into this GPT, and I'm going to say, so this is a really important step, actually. I always like to start with image reference, so image to video rather than text to video, because
What a cliffhanger. James, we just lost you. We'll give him a minute. The Wi-Fi might have dropped for both James and Amy. They're both calling in from their office in London. While they're getting reconnected, if you have any questions, remember to put those in the chats. We'll have a Q&A at the end here, so it'll be a perfect chance for you guys to be able to get all of your questions answered, because I know there's a lot of great content. And they're back. All right, back over to you.
Back. Apologies.
Sorry, we literally just had Zoom crash on both of us. I don't know whether that's never happened before.
I always start with image to video instead of text to video because someone very kindly set
what a
up
star.
you left.
Gwyn, what a hero. Because
hero.
if you just put your text to video prompt in, so I want an orca doing this or that in the water, it's just going to give you whatever it can imagine, which is the most likely thing it would think of. But I want to be very clear about what my video looks like. So I'm going to make an image first of that scene. So if I was going to do an athlete, I might want a photo of a low shot looking up at the athlete as they cross the line. And I would use that as the first scene, the first image or frame of that video. So in this case, I'm using our orca image, and I'm going to say, I want a video prompt for an orca swimming through ocean plastic. Very intelligent prompt of me, not very detailed, with no particular talent in there. And what it does back is it can see my image. That's really important and pretty magic. So now it says, tracking of an orca swimming through a dense cluster of floating plastic waste and debris. The orca gracefully maneuvers around discarded plastic bottles, bags, and tangled fishing nets. And it kind of goes on, wide angle shot, cinematic, diffused lighting. So it gives me a whole load of detail. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Runway, which is where I'm making this video. And I'm going to put my image in, our lovely upscaled image. And I'm going to put that prompt in. And then I'm going to hit generate. And then I get something like this. Hopefully that runs. It'll probably be a little bit jumpy as you see it.
Yeah, in real life, it's not jumpy at all.
Just imagine that 60 frames and cinematic.
Yeah.
So you can see, if I show that again, it's taken that very first shot right there. That is our photo, right? And then it's inferred the rest from what we've asked of it. In fact, I made one of these yesterday, unfortunately didn't have time to put in here, and the models are even better.
Yeah.
And like this deck will be out of date at about 5 p.m. today, I think, as is the speed of AI. So there we go. There's our asset. All right. Oh, I missed a slide. It's disappeared.
Oh, and then the final content is how do we get to that at scale and with multi-language content as well? Conscious of time that we want to leave some time for questions. So we'll fly through this in terms of multi-language content.
So we have used something called HeyGen, which is a really interesting tool to start looking at. You can do AI avatars, and it handles transcribing and different languages really nicely. So it works really well if your client already has content and it's maybe in French and you want to produce it in English or Somali or whatever else you want to get to. This is a really great tool to do that in, but it's also great for being able to put your script in. So in this example, we've put a script into here with this AI avatar, and we've written it in English, and we're talking about a product called Night Owl, which is an AI tool. And what it's done you can probably quite small on your screen, but it's translated it for us, and it's going to turn that into a script for this character. Hopefully I'll play this now.
Our mission at Night Owl is to unlock the potential of AI for every Filipino, regardless of their native language.
So that's the English version, and I can instantly change that to Filipino here, and it does all the lip syncing, all the movement for us.
Ang aming misyon sa Night Owl ay i-unlock ang potensyal ng AI para sa bawat Pilipino, anuman ang kanilang sariling wika.
So that's amazing. And that's actually, there's a new one that came out, I think, yesterday, which I obviously didn't have time to put into this, but you can develop AI avatars for any character now. So if there's a brand ambassador or you want to develop a character for a project you're working on, you can kind of build that from scratch in this tool and give it a script. And then you pretty quickly have TikTok content for you to start sharing. And then
Our mission at Night Owl is to unlock the potential of AI.
Is if you have your...
Hello, I'm so excited to be speaking with you. My name is Esther Kelgene Edward. I am the team lead and founder of Bluebird Leadership Initiative.
So that was a piece of content we already had. And what we're going to do is we're just going to have that fully translated for us. This is actually a one button thing, so super cool.
Hello.
Let's change to this one.
Bonjour, je suis très excitée de parler avec vous. Je m'appelle Esther Okeogène Edward. Je suis la responsable d'équipe et fondatrice de l'initiative de leadership Bluebird.
So that's really amazing because it's doing the lip syncing, but it's also understood the way she talks and her voice, and it's kind of put that together in French for us. So
again, click of a button.
Yeah, that's a pretty useful tool to play around with.
Bonjour,
okay. Thank you. That was all the tips. I think we managed it. Yeah. Sorry about dropping off, everybody.
Yeah. Really hope that that was useful and gave a few tips into the tools that we're using, the ways that we're using them, etc. So please, if you have any questions, do drop them in the chat. Oh, here's one. As a brand designer, it feels very conflicting to use AI in my creative process. However, I'm very keen to integrate it into my process. How would you advise a creative like myself who has these conflicting feelings around using AI? You are not alone. James, do you want to build on that as a creative by trade?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely feel that too. I think for me, the positives outweigh the negatives in the sense of, well, there's a few ways you could look at it. In terms of your clients and your own ability, there's kind of a duty to know what the best tools are to do your job is. You know, people want to hire those that are using the best programs, you know, if you're using Photoshop and not something else, if you're using, you know, Adobe Premiere or whatever tools that you're using. I think of AI as just another tool. And as I said earlier, you bring to it your talent and your ability. I think ultimately only you know whether it's something you want to use and how much you want to use it. there may be bits of it you want to use and bits you don't. So yeah, I think it's very personal, because there's so many different ethical conversations to have around it. But I think being part of it is a way to understand it more, and maybe your feelings to it might become more nuanced or change as you start using it. I hope that it's a difficult question, Chloe, but I do definitely understand.
I think what we've been saying internally is that just as a pencil can't write itself, a paintbrush can't paint itself. AI is a tool for your creative expression. It's absolutely not a replacement. However, as we mentioned, there are a load of other kind of ethical concerns that are raised with AI, which is why it's important that we all do our bit to make it kind of more of an equitable place.
Yeah, I think law has to catch up and get it right. I think that's obviously a big area. I think I'm happy to use the tools right now, and I also hope that those who are being trained on, they work out how to kind of work the laws out around that.
Brilliant. Any other questions from anybody?
We've got another one from Bashir. It says, can AI ever be completely unbiased, or will it always reflect some human bias? If bias is inevitable, what's the best way to make AI as fair as possible?
Hitting us with the hard questions.
I like the ethical questions.
AI ever be non-biased? I mean, it's kind of like asking whether a human can ever be non-biased. I think the answer is no. And if you have a human using AI, then you've got double layers of bias. You've got some bias that's baked into the technology, and you've got some bias that is either unconscious or conscious for us as humans. I think what will help AI in the long run is making sure that we are all actually actively using these tools so that we're including the amount of perspectives around the world and infusing them into AI. For example, what we're finding currently is that AI is brilliant at translations into certain languages because it's got a ton of training data on those languages and it has prioritized training in those languages. That means that a vast majority of the world will be somewhat left behind in AI because it hasn't had that ability to be trained on those languages. So I actually think that, the best route forward is for more of us to be using AI, to be giving it more of a global perspective instead of just a few, largely kind of white men in Silicon Valley creating it, training it, and using it. So that is my own personal perspective, but I totally agree. Can you ever bring bias out of AI? No, and I'm not sure you can with humans either. So it's something to be conscious of for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because bias isn't a science either. I don't think there's a way to solve it. There's no equation that will say that you fixed it, right? Because it's a moving thing. Bias changes and bias is different in different cultures. And so I think it's all it's active awareness. So being involved, as Amy says, and trying to remember it's hard when you're using these tools. I've actually been picked up on it helpfully when I'm producing work and it's like, oh, can we maybe make a more diverse set of images here? I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Because I'm so busy thinking about composition and whatever, I'm not thinking about enough about what's being portrayed. And so, yeah, you can lean on colleagues and your own thinking to try and improve that. We worked with someone amazing called Mujahid, who did a residency for us, precisely because he comes from Qatar, and he did a masterclass for us that was concentrated solely on his Gen AI journey as a photographer, documenting what's going on in the Middle East from a fashion perspective and a beauty perspective. So yeah, I think it's also about reaching out to other people as well.
Yeah, really, really lovely answers. Thank you both for that. And we had another question saying, especially on photos, have you found a way to refine an output you like without getting a completely new output?
Yes and no. I think it partly depends on how much you want to change and how much you want to keep the same. I'm not sure which tools that you're using for in painting. Photoshop Beta is the sort of AI one. I don't know if people are aware of that one. The beta version you can download has all of the kind of tools, AI tools that they're testing. So that can be quite useful for removing stuff. But some of the models like Midjourney, Flux has one in Korea. I think most of the sites, Free Pick, I'm not sure which ones everyone's using. Pencil obviously has one that you can outpaint, but it's not an exact science. I tend to try and get as close as possible, understanding that I'm never going to get, when I used to design an image for a pitch in Photoshop, I was like, you're sort of searching, getting and cutting bits out and stitching it together. Now I go, yeah, that's like 90% of what I want. And if it hits that and you say, well, it's the product that looks terrible. But if it was the whole sky or the lighting, I'd be like, no, I'm gonna roll again and change the prompt, because ultimately it's quicker to change the prompt and hit generate for 4 more or 8 more images than it is to spend like an hour trying to fix something that might be beyond you.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, we just come to time. Thanks everyone for attending. And of course, thank you, James and Amy, for all the wonderful
Oh, you're
work.
welcome, Jemiah. If there's any questions that didn't get answered, I know there's a load of chat, which is great to see. But if there are any questions you haven't managed to ask, you can always email us as well.
Yes, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. Thank you for having us. We hope it was useful, and we can send through the full list of tools afterwards as well.
Thank you both. And just to remind everyone, remember there's a AI challenge that will be being released at the end of this session. So please look out for the link in the chat, and you'll be able to enter a competition to use all of the skills and knowledge that James and Amy have shared today, so that you'll be able to win some cool prizes and yeah, get exposure and practice in using these tools. Wonderful session it was.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really
Thank you for having
appreciate
us.
it. Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
Thanks.
folks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.